And so I go on and say in my commentary, what we found in our critique of this view, so we're talking about godquestions.org, is that it is not necessary to jettison the whole quote-unquote religious package, end quote, known as Judaism to include its Torah-based rituals in order to acquire genuine faith in Jesus, and that to enforce this view would essentially be like asking a religious Jew to stop being, quote, religiously Jewish, end quote, in order to become, quote, religiously Christian, end quote. So, are you understanding kind of the perspective I'm inserting here into my commentary? If the religious Jew has led a life that included a healthy amount of Torah observance and focus on keeping the commandments of God, etc. So maybe we're kind of describing a typical religious Jew, like an Orthodox Jew or something like that. If that's the situation, which is actually a minority view in America and in many places of the world, Orthodox Judaism isn't the largest slice of representations when it comes to Judaism. You'll find that more and more Jews are simply secular. They're just like your average Joe on the street. They don't really have any vested interest in keeping the law of Moses per se. You know, they go to synagogue twice a year on Passover and on Yom Kippur, just like your average watered down Christian goes to church twice a year on Christmas and Easter, etc. So you have your average Joe Schmo Jew who is kind of in that same boat. He's not that really devoted to God, that really interested in keeping the commandments. He's just a token Jew because he's been raised that way. His parents are Jewish. You know, he was maybe bar mitzvahed, and then you know, he lived his life on his own. After that, he pursued his own interests. And so, if you ask him, would you give up your Judaism in order to embrace Jesus? If he came to a salvation experience, he probably wouldn't have a hard time leaving all that Jewish stuff behind because he hasn't really embraced it as a lifestyle anyway. However, in my experience, if you had this same conversation with a religious Jew, an Orthodox Jew, and all of their preferences for keeping law and their scrupulous study of Torah, et cetera, and they're holding on to all of the oral traditions and, you know, things like that, if you try to witness to them and bring them to a saving knowledge of Jesus, there's probably going to be a lot more opposition to telling them that they need to leave their Jewish lifestyle behind once they become a Christian, because Judaism and Christianity are incompatible with one another as world systems. And in all truthfulness, and I'll jump back in my commentary, if the kind of stereotypical version of Judaism that I described by Christianity is true, if it is true that Judaism is trying to work their way into heaven by the keeping of their commandments, by their merit theology, by keeping the law of Moses perfectly, et cetera, if that's true, if that is an accurate perspective and a description of Judaism, both in Paul's day as well as today, if that's true, then Judaism and Christianity are incompatible with one another. My statement is accurate there, right? If Judaism is in fact a works-based system, then Christianity as we know it in its generic evangelical form, Protestant evangelical form, is in fact incompatible with merit theology and works righteousness. So, all right, let's keep reading my commentary. Let me see how much time I got here. Oh, I'm doing great. All right, let's read some more. In my commentary, new paragraph, I say, we then observed a lengthy transcript of a sermon by Pastor John MacArthur. He's one of my favorites. I had a job as a Christian radio DJ back in the mid-'80s and mid-'90s. So for almost 10 years. It was a good, healthy 6-7 years as a radio DJ at a Christian radio station, FM radio station. And during that time, along with playing contemporary and traditional Christian music, we also played sermons from pastors, well-known pastors, you know, John MacArthur, Josh McDowell, Focus on the Family, just those are two that just popped in my head off the top of my head. But John MacArthur was one of the champions, one of the giants that when I met, I couldn't wait to listen to him when I was doing my radio show. You know, because I had to play the tapes for the other people to listen to to be broadcast on the air, and I was just ready to listen to his sermons every week because he's so profound. He's very deep. He's very knowledgeable. He's very articulate. He's got some humor, And he just captivated me with his sermons just over and over again. And to this day, I still appreciate his resources. So we looked at his commentary on this passage, and here's what I say. John MacArthur on the passage of Matthew 9:14 through 17, and what we found is that Pastor MacArthur is to be quite bold in his indictment of Judaism as a religion in need of replacement. And this is kind of unfortunate for me as a Messianic Jew, because I have so much respect for this particular pastor. And so I have this little bit of cognitive dissonance going on whenever I listen to Pastor MacArthur. On the one hand, when I say cognitive dissonance, it's kind of like you like but you don't like. It's a love-hate relationship when I say cognitive dissonance. It's a psychology term I learned when I was in school.